Hello. Let's take a seat. We're a bit delayed, but good morning, everyone, and welcome to this high-level event organized by the Socialist and Democrat Group of the European Parliament, Cultivating Tomorrow, the Post-2027 CAP, and the future of agriculture and food. My name is Sofia Sánchez Manzanaro. I'm an agri-food journalist at Euractiv, and I will be guiding you throughout this discussion. You have this morning interpretation in English, French, Italian, and also Spanish, even though it's not in the program, but just choose your preferred language. So I'm going to start very quickly so we have time to hear and have engaging discussions today on the CAP. So I'm going to give the floor to Irache García Pérez, the president of the S&D Group. Irache, adelante.
Thank you. Gracias. Comisario Hansen.
Thank you, Commissioner Hansen, representatives of the organizations, all welcome. Now, with this conference, we're starting this with a great conviction. The future of the EU goes through the future of agriculture. And this future can only be built if we listen to us and recognize us and realize the size of the challenge we have today. So here we're trying to ensure this is it's not just a technical discussion. We're having to define a new social contract between the EU and those who feed it. I'd like to really welcome our team from the working group, MEPs, etc., for having organized this initiative, having given me the opportunity to speak to you, in this case as the president of the S&D Group, but also as an MEP from an autonomous region, a region where agriculture is one of the essential activities. Agriculture was part of my activities and my responsibility as an MEP. That's 12 mandates. I had the opportunity to be part of the Committee for Agriculture, to be also present when negotiating reforms of the Common Agricultural Policy. I'm also very familiar with such an important situation that we need to know and which is essential because agriculture is going through a very critical moment in time. This is something we need to recognize. However, quite clearly, at the end of the day, agriculture is a very dynamic sector, and it is pushed by different situations and circumstances which define its what is happening. I'm not the one saying that there's a crisis now. It's the farmers who are saying this. They've had 40% less income at the European level. The cooperatives talk about this, talking of the volatility of the market, and young people too who want to enter the agriculture, but they've got too many obstacles to fix. We've told the people who are working in the sector who want a good level of in their jobs, and also the families too. So this is a problem that shows the need we have to establish our activities in this sector. And we must say, let's not forget there's a planet that we are all responsible for. At the same time, we're going through a global context that multiplies things. Geopolitical instability, social tensions, wars, and the impact, the speeded up change, climate change, and the loss of biodiversity. Europe is the epicenter of all these crises. The Common Agricultural Policy today is mirroring the greatest challenges we are having to deal with in these times. So the Social Democrat Group has been very clear. The next Common Agricultural Policy can't just be an administrative thing. It has to give us a new vision for Europe. It has to guarantee our strategic independence and our food sovereignty. During the last few years, since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, the challenges with Russia and the open discussion on energy security, I think a very important discussion was started, which that agreed with with those who were saying for years now that agriculture is a strategic sector because guaranteeing food sovereignty in Europe is essential. If we don't put ourselves in a situation, we'll end up, just as with energy, we will be in Europe unable to give food to our citizens. So let's look at this scenario and we will understand exactly why it is essential to guarantee the future of the agricultural sector as a strategic sector for the Union. We want an agricultural policy that guarantees our food sovereignty, our independence, and that protects those who work the land and the rural territories, strengthening food security, preserving the soil, water, biodiversity, landscape, and public health. It has to be at the service of people and of the planet. Now, there's a thought here which arises. In many situations, there is the temptation, these fake dilemmas where you have to choose. Well, even in this sense, we've seen this. Some say that we have to choose between defending the future of the planet, combating climate change, guaranteeing biodiversity, or defending the agricultural sector as if they were in conflict. Now, this is a lie, because who better than the agricultural sector, the animal raising sectors, is aware of the needs we have to combat climate change, who are suffering today the consequences of the inaction up to now. So we've got all these challenges today, and the first thing is we have to tell the truth. If you don't have sufficient funding, the agricultural policy won't be able to do its duty. We can't ask our farmers to do more with fewer resources. We need a budget which is at the moment is reducing year by year. In 23, it fell at the historical minimum of 0.3% of the EU GDP, whilst the climate disasters have already cost 650 billion euros since 1980, and we think we can't keep thinking that we can do more with less. Don't fool yourselves. The EU isn't built on accounting tricks, but removing and destroying a budget. No, the EU can be built only if there's a political will, and if there are. So the negotiations for the next MFF, I need to be clear. The Socialist and Democrat group is going to defend a strong agricultural policy with two pillars, with a solid budget and with safe, secure budget, safe from inflation. And we want one which continues being a common policy, not a sum of national decision, because fragmenting the CAP is fragmenting the EU. So allow me to add a message here, which is essential. Last week, with a non-pay paper that the Commission submitted to solve doubts we had raised on the financial framework, there were rumours that were saying that it was an important step, and with this we could be satisfied, especially within the EPP, Madam Metsola. Now, there's one thing I want to say clearly. The Socialists and Democrats are not satisfied. Not satisfied with a document that is just raising certain questions to a certain point, that we're well aware, for instance, of the fact that there are concerns, but something we really want to work to guarantee the certainty in the sector, a sector which is essential. So, Mr. Hansen, Commissioner Hansen, I hope that these negotiations that we're having now, we're going to have to open on the budget framework, is aware. I know that you are aware of the fact that we've got to buttress to a certain extent things that were said up to now that is not right, and we're aware of the responsibility we have. So we will sit down and negotiate, but this implies that we're also going to submit our conditions too, putting them on the table to have a financial framework so that we don't allow politics to influence the common agricultural policy. When you give the member states the freedom to establish the budget for the green measures, when the Commission adds a minimum financing, national financing of 30% without having common rules, when we open the renationalisation risk and support, when there's no common strategy to manage the crisis, what we are doing is abandoning our farmers to volatility and to inequalities, and we're not going to allow this. For this reason, we want new tools, a European instrument for reinsurance, a policy for managing risks that is really common, and a regulatory framework that doesn't abandon any farmer or any land. And we want a key instrument, the right transition funds for agriculture outside of the CAP in order to fund investments and adaptation to the climate, digitalization, because you can't have a just transition if you leave behind those who are feeding us. Furthermore, we want more from Europe, not less. We want a Europe that protects us, that accompanies us, which does not divide us and not abandon us. This is not just a desire, it's a responsibility, it's a historic duty, and which we as the Social and Democrat group are aware of this, because the policy is not how to adapt the CAP to the budget, but rather adapt the budget to the future we want for Europe. And this future requires strong agricultural sector ready for climate change, which is just and equitable for those who are working there, and that can offer accessible, quality, healthy food to our citizens. Wanting to defend our farmers does not mean looking at the past. That's one of those fake choices which we've seen, as if the traditional policies meant the past, and combating the new measures. No, we want to defend the CAP, defend our European farmers, and this does not mean looking to the past. It means looking to the future with greater hope. The future of European agriculture is chosen here, and you know it better than anyone. And the Social Democrat family is going to deal with this. We're going to help young people, families who live off agriculture, and the workers who guarantee the harvesting, and our citizens who are expecting accessible, sustainable, safe products. And we have to testify to our a commitment. And if we're dealing with the CAP, you will have to deal with this. We'll have to face our farmers and our environmentalists. We can do this by building bridges. And those who are trying to divide our union will find us there defending a strong, just and deeply European common agricultural policy. Thank you. Thank you.
To Irache García Pérez, the president of the S&D Group. Now I'm going to move to the keynote speech by Commissioner for Agriculture and Food, Christoph Hansen. The floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this high-level conference on the future of agriculture organized by the S&D Group. I meet more regularly with some of the colleagues, with Dario, with Christina, with Eric in the Agriculture Committee, but I think it's as well good to open a little bit the spectrum and to discuss about the future of our agriculture, the challenges and the way to get there as well. And I can confirm as well to the audience, President, that I knew you way before you were president of the S&D Group. Back in time, I was an assistant here in the European Parliament working for Astrid Lulling. Maybe some of you remember her. The bar downstairs is now named after her, and I know that we were a lot in contact back in time already as well with your team on bees, on wine, and different issues that are as well very crucial parts of the common agriculture policy. And as I said, over the past months, I have, of course, engaged engaged with the members of the European Parliament, including the members of the S&D Group, so your priorities are very clear to me as well. And I believe we all agree that agriculture and food are a strategic sector and as well a very critical asset to Europe. And at the same time, we know as well that it's very well that we need to preserve the strategic role of agriculture in our economy, and therefore the CAP must evolve towards a more impactful policy as well, adapted to the local realities with simpler provisions while also protecting the income of those farmers most in need. And I believe this aspect of the food security as well is a very important one, because we see that at the global level, at the geopolitical level, we are challenged on the food production. We are challenged with the import taxes by the US, for example, and therefore it is very important that we engage as well to find solutions for that. So I think that is a very important one, and we need to be independent in a way when it comes to food production, because I always say you can't build a continent on an empty stomach, and I think this is more true than ever. It was the founding idea because this continent was starving after the Second World War, and we needed to increase significantly the production, and I think this is something that is more true than ever. And I also know that your first concern, and you mentioned it, is the budget, the support for our European farmers. And indeed, I have to say comparisons with the current budget are not so straightforward, because the MFS structure has, of course, changed, and today we are speaking of a guaranteed minimum income and this is inside of a larger package that could be mobilized to benefit directly and indirectly rural and farming communities if used in the necessary synergy. So that minimum is 300 billion euros that are already secured to support farmers' income with tools that contribute to this. And for me, it was very important that the money that gets directly to the farm, so might it be a support in the hectare-based payments in the first pillar, might it be eco schemes, might it be as well tools from the second pillar like the agro-environmental measures, like the on-farm investment and so on. This is the money that gets directly to the farm, and this needs to be secured. For the rest, we have, of course, in addition, 453 billion that are still available, non-ring-fenced, in the national and regional plans for the member states to allocate according to their priorities, including for agriculture and rural areas in that sense. And member states must use, and I think I have to underline this, it is an obligation, this additional budget, to implement measures which are mandatory for all member states as part of the tools for CAP. Leader is not yet ring-fenced. It is mandatory to do it for the member states. Support to knowledge and innovation remains mandatory. POSEI is in the treaties, remains mandatory. The EU school schemes remain mandatory. And if a member state would dare not to do it, the Commission would not approve the plan. And member states can also use these additional EU resources allocated for each plan to top up funding for tools that support income too, over and beyond the initially ring-fenced funds. And moreover, the Unity safety net worth 6.3 billion will also help farmers manage market crisis. And with this amount, we are doubling the amount of the current crisis reserve, and I think this is very important. I mentioned the geopolitical challenges, but we can as well mention the floods, the droughts, the wildfires, and so on that we are suffering from. But all this is not sufficient, and therefore I'm in close contact as well with the president of the EIB, Nadia Calvino, to find as well, and the president mentioned the need for insurance as well. We need more insurance and reinsurance systems in order to cover the entire production, because currently only 20% of the production is covered by an effective insurance policy. And also there are 40 billion available for agriculture under the Competitiveness Fund and the Horizon, and I think that is very important to mention. And also for the first time a mechanism has as well been proposed to adjust the EU budget annually to cushion against unexpected high inflation, and I believe we have met over the last years these kind of situations with the war of aggression, the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine, the resulting energy crisis and prices and so on. So I think there is a need to be prepared for that as well. And also when it comes to preserving the identity of a common policy with, of course, an increased flexibility for the member states. And I have to say, yesterday I had the discussion as well in the Council with the ministers. The member states are asking more flexibility, but they want as well the commonness. They see that threatened as well. So it is a little bit opposing what the ministers are asking me. More flexibility and more see of a common agriculture policy. That is, of course, a little bit a contradiction. So I think we need to find there good solutions as well. And I want to reassure you that we are preserving the CAP's identity through a number of provisions. And first of all, the new CAP builds on the current CAP strategic plans and remains its common character. And the CAP remains defined by common EU-level objectives and common policy requirements to guarantee the level playing field across the member states. And as proposed by President von der Leyen to President Metsola and Prime Minister Frederiksen last week, to further reinforce the identity and to safeguard this common character, certain provisions enshrined in the regulation on the NRPP could be integrated into the sectorial legislation on the CAP, and I strongly support this. By the way, I was asking this from the very start of the discussion that we had internally as well. And also the involvement of the regional authorities is also a key element of governance underscored by President von der Leyen in her letter to the co-legislators, and it will preserve the well-established role of regions in the CAP implementation. And I have to tell you, I just come back, as I said, from a discussion on the outermost regions, for example, and it is really important that the regions are there to play their role. And then secondly, the CAP's current toolbox remains intact with improved and simplified instruments building on the experience of the current CAP. And I believe we had to do now a simplification package that fortunately went through as well under the guidance of André Rodriguez, who is not in the room now. But I think this is as well the signal that the current agriculture policy is not perfect as well, that we had to simplify in that manner. And I know that you have as well asked for the two pillars to remain, and I want to reassure you all the instruments of the current two pillars are there, often simplified to reduce administrative burdens and allow member states to better adapt the tools to the local reality. And Maria Panayotou, she will speak to you afterwards by video message. And I have to tell you, I traveled in the same week to Sweden and to Cyprus, and I can tell you this is not. This is why we need to be more adaptive, because as well different tools are working maybe in Sweden, but they will not be working in Cyprus. And therefore, the instruments of the second pillar will continue to be part of the CAP, and they will continue to be supported. And in 2024, the CAP contributed to the creation of 200,000 jobs and about 2,500 rural businesses. And being under the same programming instrument, member states will have access to a wider budget to support investments in rural areas such as connectivity, infrastructure and essential services, which are crucial for farmers, businesses and families. And to ensure continuity of investments in rural areas, the Commission is now as well proposing a spending rural target which amounts to at least 10% of the NRP plans envelope outside the ring-fenced amounts for the CAP and the fishery policy. And so 10%, a minimum out of this 453 billion additionally loans, so you can calculate how much this already represents. And the proposals respond to a strong call, and I know I can count as well on your support for a fairer and more targeted income support system and for promoting fairness across the member states. And the new system system features a digressive area-based income support, which targets support to those most at need. And to ensure fairness and equity, the new CAP includes measures such as obligatory digressivity and a cap on the total annual payments per farmer under the new digressive payment. We had as well the controversial discussion yesterday in the Council. Some countries are concerned that their bigger farms would be damaged, but I always say if money is capped or the digressivity, the money remains in the member state. It's not going to another common pot, so the member state will be able to use it to better target it for the farmers most at need. It's not the same categories in all the member states, but I think it is very important that the member states can target to support to the specific groups and simplify payments for small farms as well. And let me give you some examples of groups or types of farms that are clearly need and deserve higher attention, because I think it is very important that we maintain not only the big structure, they are as well contributing, but as well the small structured farms in all our regions. And I think that is very important to underline it. And when we look at the structure of our farming community, the income gaps are quite striking. Family farms earn on average almost 50% less than other types of farms. Young farmers also face a disadvantage. Their average income is 14% lower than that of farmers between 40 and 60 years of age. And we see similar disparities for women. Women farmers earn 37% less than that of their male counterparts, and farmers operating in areas with natural constraints are also under pressure. They earn on average 26% less than farmers in other regions. And I believe we all agree that also in areas with natural constraints we need to maintain farming. This is not only for the food quantity but as well for food diversity and for the maintenance of our rural areas, because without farming in certain areas, what would be there? I think that would be a huge danger in certain eastern parts of the European Union across the Russian border. This would be represent a vulnerability, but I look to Cristina as well in Spain. If in certain regions there wouldn't be agriculture, the risk of wildfires would even be higher, because farmers maintain the land, take organic material off the land, and I think that is very important that we make this possible as well to produce in all our regions. And we are also increasing the maximum spending for coupled income support, giving member states the flexibility to promote specific sectors and support as well sensitive regions. And I think that is very important that we do this increase not only to promote certain sectors, maybe livestock in difficult mountain regions, olive trees in as well mountain regions, but it is as well important because this money will in the end go to the one that is working the land, that is producing actively, and not only the one that is owning the land. And I think that is very important to why we need to increase this coupled support again. And also, when it comes to the quality of working conditions, I believe the CAP stands for good workers' conditions in farming, and the CAP remains the current system of safeguards for fair working conditions on farm as a condition for receiving public support. And the CAP enhances social inclusion and gender equality, improving the position of women in farming and creating enabling conditions for their inclusions in the rural economy. And under the CAP 2023 to 2027, for the first time in the policy, women farmers can benefit from enhanced support across different funding mechanisms. And the CAP goes beyond mere compliance with social standards by offering a range of measures to promote social sustainability. And this includes, for example, advice and the new farm relief services for farmers during periods of needs, essential for supporting farmers' mental health as well and promoting a better life-work balance. And this is, for example, the case, and I always mentioned it in different discussions. When I traveled to Sweden, I met a young female farmer, which is, by the way, a member of SEJA as well, and she told me, in my region, I have to choose either kids or cows. And I asked, why do you say that? Well, the next childcare facility is 1 hour drive away, so she would be obliged to drive 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour back, and the same procedure in the evening, 4 hours a day. That is not compatible with the work on the farm, and therefore we need to have this done. I said mental health, farmers that are constantly working 365 days a year without any holidays, and most of them don't have holidays, or you don't have time to take care of your child when it's sick. This is causing huge stress, and that is why I believe that this farm relief services will help not only the better help for let's say the mental health of our farming community, but also to attract again new generations, because if young generations compare themselves to other economic sectors and they see in the farming this is not possible or compatible with a family or very difficult, then of course they will not be motivated to do so. And also when it comes to the environmental ambition, that needs to be more impactful in the tools that we have. And the new CAP retains a strong environmental ambition, but in a more pragmatic and targeted way. And we are introducing a new farm stewardship program with environmental conditionality requirements to help farmers produce food while also taking care of the environment. And this approach will respond to better to territorial realities. I mentioned the same week in Sweden and in Cyprus. Well, if you want to do erosion protection, what works in Sweden does not work in Cyprus, I can tell you, and this is why this farm stewardship is very important, and this will as well replace the current approach that we have via the GAEX in the first pillar. And as regards the incentives, we have simplified and merged existing schemes. For example, eco schemes and agro-environmental measures. It's 2 programs. It's let's say it's 50 euros on one side, 50 euros on the other side, but it's twice the administrative burden. And often these programs serve the same purpose. So by merging them, we're making the financial attractiveness bigger, and at the same time we do cut by half the administrative burden for the farmers, but as well for the member states' authorities. Farmers can also receive a lump sum payment of 200,000 euros for transitioning to more sustainable farming approaches. For example, if a conventional farmer is going from conventional to organic, this will help him and make this incentive bigger even. And then I mentioned the problem already on the generational renewal, and let me stress the importance of generational renewal in the Commission proposal, which is very close to my heart. And I mentioned as well the figures. Less than 12% of the EU farmers are below the age of 40. Christina, I'm traveling by the end of the week to Andalusia. In Spain, it's less than 8% of farmers below the age of 40, and the average is of 59. So I think it's really a challenge if we want to ensure food security, to bring these numbers to a more safe haven again. And under the new CAP, each member state will develop a tailored strategy, while national strategic plans will offer a real starter pack to help young farmers enter the profession and ensure succession and renewal. And the CAP's support for young farmers is closely linked to the strategy on generation renewal that was adopted on the 21st of October. But we can't conclude without talking about food. Food security, a strategic asset in preserving EU stability and prosperity, depends on both supply and demand. And on the supply side, the CAP provides support for farmers to help continue producing. And on the demand side, the vision outlines critical steps for future agriculture and food security during this mandate. For example, the Commission will organise next year a food dialogue with the food system actors, including consumers, primary producers, industry, retailers, public authorities, and civil society. And in conclusion, I would like to emphasise that the policy choice in our proposal is very clear. It emphasises the recognition for the crucial role of farmers in ensuring food security and sovereignty. And the vision sets a clear direction for the sector, and it is essential that we work together to translate this vision into concrete actions. And the new CAP follows the direction of travel established by the vision. We are committed to ensuring that the CAP continues to support European farmers in a more effective way. And in line with the S&D's vision, our proposal will ensure that the CAP is equipped with the necessary tools and budget to support European farmers, ensures food security and safety, revitalises rural areas, and safeguards the environment while forging the resilience of the whole agriculture sector and rural communities. And let's continue the dialogue and to work together to prioritise the competitiveness and sustainability of the European agriculture. We need to give a future to the sector for the various reasons that I have mentioned. I also always say this is the beginning of a discussion. It's not a sprint. It is a marathon. So I think we are not there yet. I hear as well the clear messages from the S&D Group. And there is a lot of work ahead of us to get things right, to make this policy fit for the future, fit for the next generation, and fit for food security in Europe. And I count on your constructive input as well to this common challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hansen, for your words and for finding the time to be here with us today. Now I'm going to give the floor to S&D Agri Coordinator Dario Nardella just before kicking off the first panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank Irace and Christophe for their speech and introduction, and also the Secretariat of our group for organizing this important high-level conference. It's a real pleasure and a great honor to open this high-level event on the Post-2027 CAP and the future of agriculture and food. And allow me to thank and welcome the Tuscan Mayor's delegation who is convening today in our meeting. Especially in the times of change we are living in, we are here to discuss one of the most important and perhaps one of the oldest and the most emblematic European policies, the Common Agriculture Policy. And we will do so from the perspective of socialists and democrats in the European Parliament. For us, this is not just about farming. It is about food, it is about people, it's about fairness. And farmers feed Europe and beyond. They work our land and maintain our rural areas alive and vibrant. Yet, too many are struggling with low incomes and unfair burden. This is unacceptable. Agriculture is the foundation of our present and the cornerstone of our future. Without farmers, without rural communities, there is no food security, no social cohesion, and honestly, as Irace said, no European Union as we have known it for decades. That is why we, as the S&D Group, believe and fight for a strong, fair, and sustainable CAP. We are at a pivotal moment. The proposal from the European Commission, together with the recent proposals for amendments put forward to this Parliament, represents a turning point in the history of the European Union. At a time when farmers are struggling and families are paying more for food, the Commission is proposing cuts of over 20% to the funds. This means less support for quality and healthy food and ultimately a blow to European citizens themselves. And let's be clear, while the overall European budget will grow to 2 trillion euros, only 14% would go to agriculture compared to 30% in the past. This goes against the very vision that inspired the founders of the European Union. This cut comes at a time when the outlook for the sector is far from positive. So we appreciate the effort of European Commissioner Hansen, but the new proposal put forward by the Commission still creates confusion in governance, impacting accountability and transparency. It reduced the budget available for farmers and the rural areas, and it destroys a system that has worked for decades. We, the Socialists and Democrats, unlike the Commission, believe that, first of all, CAP is not a national policy. It is called the Common Agricultural Policy for a reason. We firmly reject merging the CAP into one single fund together with cohesion funds. This will centralize resources and create a direct competition between regional and local elected leaders and farmers. On top of that, we risk having 27 different agricultural policies instead of one, which means more inequality between member states, between regions and farmers. The CAP is one of the few truly shared instruments of European solidarity, and we strongly stay behind it. Second, CAP is not up to renationalization. We oppose the dismantling of the two-pillar structures and remain committed to its integrity, as it guarantees predictability and commonality. The separation between the direct income support envelope and the rural development one guarantees coherence. The last thing our farmers need is to add one more layer of instability to their already uncertain work. Third point, CAP is not for sale. We do not accept bargaining down the CAP budget. How can we ask farmers to feed us and to deliver the green transition, invest in new technologies, and face rising production costs while simultaneously cutting the budget? European agriculture cannot be expected to transition successfully without adequate and predictable resources. Therefore, we call for increased financing aligned with our strategic needs and climate goals. And the fourth, CAP is not CAP without involvement of local and regional authorities. The idea of single integrated national and regional partnership plans can translate in practice in sidelining the local and regional authorities. In other words, those who know better their territories. We cannot accept centralization as an automatic synonym for simplification. We know that we need simplification, but simplification is not deregulation and it is not centralization. Our vision for a common agricultural policy stands in direct opposition to the proposal that is on the table right now. Why? Well, to start with, we are the Socialists and Democrats, meaning that our priority is and will always be to protect and defend workers. Therefore, it will not come as a surprise to her that we propose a true social pact for farmers, workers, consumers, and the rural areas. Because this policy is not just an economic tool. It is a tool to enhance social and territorial cohesion. We must change the system to ensure that resources are channeled towards those who truly need them, active farmers. And we must do so ensuring fairness at all levels. This means applying mandatory capping on direct payments and increasing degressivity, because public money must serve the public good. Prioritizing support for small and medium-sized farms, family farms, young farmers and women farmers. Because without them, there is no sustainable, foreseeable future in our rural areas. Embedding social conditionality across all CAP instruments, the S&D Group will continue to fight to guarantee decent working conditions, safe workplaces, and fair wages for all agricultural workers. Securing a dedicated just transition fund for agriculture, as well as a reinforced crisis reserve. Because when we say that nobody must be left behind, we really mean it. Strengthening our market tools to protect our farmers against unfair trading practices and price volatility in the supply chain. In other words, we want market rules that work for producers, not the other way around. And the last but not least, rewarding farmers for their positive contributions to the environmental cause, from animal welfare to soil protection, and offering incentives to take further steps in this direction. We cannot ask farmers to do everything on their own. We must accompany them, create a trust-based partnership with financial support, training, and advice. Colleagues, the truth is that farmers and rural communities feel abandoned nowadays. They face pressure from the market, from climate, from rules that often are too complex, that discourage rather than support. We must show them that the socialists and Democrats are on their side, that we understand and share their worries, propose them realistic solutions, and that we are ready to fight for them. We ask our allies in this House to stand with us without subordinating the interests and needs of farmers to political games. We want to be very clear on that. 10 million European farmers would not forgive us for it. And I would like to thank my colleagues in our working group in Agri Committee, Eric, Christina, and the others, and Christophe for his support, because we want to be very clear on all those goals. The stakes are high. The future of European agriculture must be rooted in solidarity, fairness and sustainability, values at the heart of our socialist family. I am eager to hear your perspectives and to work together in shaping a stronger, fairer CAP for the next generations. Thank you to the speakers, to our hostess, and to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to Dario Nardella, S&D Agri Coordinator. Now we're going to move to the first panel, safeguarding the CAP's identity, funding, governance, and principles. And while I call the three participants that we have in person on stage to join me, Jan Dolezal, Joanna Stawowi, and Peter Meidendorp, we're going to also listen to a video message by Maria Panayotou, who is the Minister of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment of Cyprus. She has been minister since January 2024, and previously she was Environmental Commissioner of Cyprus, a post that she held until March 2023. So when the video is ready, I think we can start by listening to what the minister has to say.
Sia Beres, dear Commissioner Hansen, dear members of the S&D Party, dear members of the Agri Committee, dear farmers, dear friends. Let me congratulate the S&D Party for organizing this very useful discussion on the future of CAP after 2027 and the future of agriculture and food. Unfortunately, my obligations as the Minister for Environment does not allow me to attend this event in person, and I would like to thank the organizers for providing me the opportunity to share with you our views through this message. As we discuss the future of the Common Agriculture Policy, I would like to begin with a phrase that was recently mentioned at the Council of Agriculture Ministers. If the CAP did not exist, under the current circumstances, we would have to invent it. This phrase captures the importance of the CAP today. It also reflects the spirit of the joint letter signed by 20 agriculture ministers, in which we called for a strong, adequately funded and well-functioning two-pillar CAP. Agriculture is one of strategic importance for the Union, and we must all join forces to provide a sufficient legislative framework, adequately funded, with clear goals, providing predictability and stability to our farmers and rural communities. We acknowledge the efforts of the European Commission to preserve the key features of the Common Agriculture Policy through measures aimed at supporting our farmers. However, the Commission's proposal to change the architecture of the CAP and to merge its funding into a single fund have triggered serious reactions from the majority of Member States. There have also been strong disagreements with these proposals from the European Parliament and farmers' organizations across the Union. The new approach ahead of us requires a true marathon of negotiations which must lead to positive and tangible results for our farmers. In this marathon of negotiations, the upcoming Cypriot presidency will strive to act as an honest broker, both among the member states and between the institutions of the European Union. We intend to establish a close cooperation with all member states and all political groups of the European Parliament in order to achieve our common goals. The Cyprus presidency, during an era of climate change, biodiversity loss and geopolitical instability, will focus on the improvement of the competitiveness, sustainability and attractiveness of European agriculture. Among our key priorities is to continue the negotiations of the proposed CAP package for the next programming period and facilitate a result-oriented and constructive dialogue that will enable the achievement of common landing zones between member states and institutions. We will also try to advance the discussions on the proposal of the Common Markets Organization, providing a robust and adaptive legislative response to farmers' challenges for the next programming period. Our aim is to achieve a new CAP legislative framework that is simplified, innovative and strong, that safeguards the position of farmers in the food supply chain, provides incentives for achieving EU's climate and environmental goals, strengthens the sustainability of rural areas and food production within the Union, provides modern and adequate crisis management instruments, promotes generation renewal in agriculture. Our farmers should be protected from market imbalances through fit-for-purpose measures to safeguard their competitiveness. The Cyprus presidency will place strong emphasis on advancing initiatives that strengthen the position of farmers within the agri-food supply chain. In this context, the presentation of the report on the evaluation of the Unfair Trading Practices Directive provides an important opportunity to assess the effectiveness of existing tools and to identify possible improvements to ensure a resilient agri-food supply chain. With your cooperation, we will work to promote measures that ensure fairer value distribution, strengthen their position in the food supply chain and their negotiating capacity, improve producers' adaptivity to market and climate-related challenges, and support innovation, competitiveness, and generation renewal in rural areas. My team and I have carefully studied the position paper on the Post-2027 Common Agricultural Policy recently published by the S&D Party. Let me say that your concerns are very much our own, both as a member state and as the upcoming Council presidency. Your vision for the future CAP is ambitious, yet at the same time realistic and action-oriented, and we share your commitment to turning these ideas into concrete results for European farmer and rural communities. We need to ensure adequate funding for our farmers, a fair income and a simplified legal framework that will enable producers to continue producing food and supporting Europe's food security. This is why I would like to invite your political family to work hand in hand with the Cypriot presidency so that through genuine and constructive dialogue we can move forward towards a CAP that truly reflects fairness for farmers, farm workers and rural communities alike. Our common goal must be a CAP that ensures a fair income for farmers and decent working conditions for agricultural workers, encourages generation renewal, revitalizes rural economies and societies, and protects nature resources through farming practices that enhance biodiversity and animal welfare. Let me wish you a fruitful discussion and once again thank you for the opportunity to intervene.
Thank you to the Minister for sending that message. Now we're going to move to our speakers. We're going to have some introductory remarks by them, and I'm going to ask them to be very brief. Like this, we can have a real discussion. So to start, we have Jan Dolezal, Vice President of Copa Cogeca. He's also a Czech farmer, and in 2020 he became President of the Agrarian Chamber of the Czech Republic. In January 2024, he took up his role as the 5th Vice President of Copa Cogeca. So, Jan, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jan Dolezal, as was said. I'm a young farmer, technically young farmer at 39, so at least by the European definition. And I also come from a family farm in Czech Republic. Also, I could say small family farm, but because we have around 120 hectares, which is quite small at the scale of Czech Republic, but at the European scale, it is actually a bigger farm. I'm here representing COPA, which is the biggest NGO representing farmers here in Brussels. We call ourselves the House of Farmers because we represent the highest number of farmers around Europe from all European countries, coming from different regions from Europe. And also farming differently. Some are conventional, some are organic, some are focusing more on livestock farming, and some are focusing more on arable farming or special crops. At this moment, I think we can all agree that the European agriculture stands at a crossroads. Farmers and agricultural cooperatives face record high energy costs and very, very high inflation. On one hand, and on the other hand, we see the price of food or agriculture commodities stagnating, which actually affects the income of farmers. We are still, at the moment, or we as farmers are still below 60% of the EU average when it comes to the average income. Which is also a challenge when it comes to covering the labor costs for our employees. So this is something that we think that we have to be aware of when we're discussing sustainability, because it's not just about environmental sustainability, which is extremely important because farming, it's a long-term business, and we like to work on generational renewal, of course, on one hand, and we have to make sure that our farms are able to provide livelihood for next generations, but we also have to make sure that farmers are able to reach a fair income. It was said that we are supposed to be brief, so I will probably skip to the end of my speech, and I just want to stress that we have to do our best at the moment to defend farmers' interests. And I'm glad that we are here to have this discussion, to perhaps be able to put pressure together on the European Commission and to make the proposals that were proposed in July this year better and more workable for farmers and their future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. Now we're gonna move to another young farmer, Peter Meidendorp, the president of SEJA, a young farmer from the Netherlands who has served as vice president of the NAJK, the Dutch Young Farmers Association, before being elected president of SEJA in June 2023. He has been re-elected for a second mandate in July 2025. Peter, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Well, firstly, I mistook the voting machine for the microphone, but I did vote in favor, so don't worry about that. Well, thank you very much for the invitation, both MEP Nadela and Claire Go, for the invitation to speak on behalf of Europe's young farmers today. My name is Peter Mededorp. I'm a young farmer from the northern part of the Netherlands, where I have a farm where I produce potatoes, barley, sugar beets, onions and corn. And it's my honor to stand here before you as the president of CISA, the European Council of Young Farmers, to represent its 34 national organizations. So the chance is really high that one of these organizations is also present in your countries and your regions. These 34 organizations stand united to what for them is so important at the European level, including, obviously, when it comes to the common agricultural policy. The first thing you asked me in the briefing is to give CISA's view on the Commission's post-2027 CAP proposal compared to the current CAP and in relation with the national and regional partnership plans. And we have been very clear so far. For a change, I would actually like to start a bit with the positive, because we do welcome some of the provisions proposed in the CAP regulation. It's a very innovative approach to generational renewal with the starter package for young farmers. We really find an ambassador in the commissioner for young farmers as well, but also the expanded notion of income support, although lots of uncertainties still persist in the regulation. The investment and risk management tools is also something we're quite enthusiastic about, and the specific focus on transit action. Nevertheless, or however, we do see a legislative package which is unveiled in a rushed and fragmented way with very little transparency. Young farmers are not opposed to reform as such, but we do expect the governments to be clearer and the direction to be more coherent. Unfortunately, the interventions are confronted with the belief at the highest political level of this union that we must simplify the budgetary framework by slashing a well-established, ever-improving CAP governance model. In our view, the so-called NRPP regulation presents a bureaucratic vision of the common agricultural policy, which will make it more challenging for the national and regional authorities to bring a coherent and ambition to their national strategies. At the moment, and even with the suggested amendments that came from the Commission last week to bring back the agricultural provisions to the CAP, we are and remain very sceptical when it comes to the uncertainty on the recommendation system which is proposed by the NRP regulation. Farmers cannot afford such uncertainty caused by this recommendation system and the hesitation on the exact timeline of the Commission and the potential dependencies on the chapters of the NRP plans, which creates for us even more worries. It also comes at the cost of our ambition at the European level for generational renewal. The final proposals, contrary to what is maybe the expectation from the young farmer commissioner, the proposals did not include any earmarking for young farmers. This is to us, of course, unacceptable. And at EU level, it's a political signal telling the next generation that their future in farming is secondary. At member state and farmer level, it is a deletion of a concrete leverage to secure instruments targeted at young farmers. Specific support, installation aid, farm succession, investment support. And we do hear it from our members. Their projects, it is essential to have instruments with tangible results on the ground. This is also the transition to the second request you had from me in my intervention, which is an assessment of the S&D position paper. Firstly, my spontaneous reaction is to really thank you for your involvement and your general support for young farmers. It's mentioned in your paper, but also something we feel when we really monitor your votes, your interventions in Parliament. the defense of a strong, dedicated, well-funded cap, looking at income support, but also risk management, investments, sustainable transition and rural development. And this is something we really have in common as a mission with the S&D. But since co-decision was established in agriculture, the European Parliament has been the strongest supporters for young farmers on our continent, raising budgetary ambition for generational renewal, reform after reform. And however, when I'm looking at the details of the chapter of generational renewal, specifically at page 8 of your manifesto, we do miss a fundamental element, and that's an earmarking for young farmers. Again, I insist this must be re-established to avoid any backtracking on over 10 years of ambitions for young farmers and dedicated support from the Parliament. So today I'm calling on you to step up your game, to start work on the amending process, and we count really on you as a young farmer community. Of course, I'm standing ready for any questions that follow after this. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Peter. And lastly, we're going to go to DG Agri's Joanna Stavovi, Deputy Head of Unit dealing with social sustainability, who has 15 years of experience in agri-related topics. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, and I must say it's really energy boosting to sit amongst the EU young farmers. Yes, I work in the Directorate for Sustainability, and I have just 3 brief headlines on each of the pillars. So I would start with the economic sustainability. I think it's very important to recall that the Commission proposed capping and aggressivity of direct payments. If we have less money, we need to be more strategic about channeling where the money goes. So that is one of the key points where also the Commission's proposal converge with the opinion of the S&D Group as expressed in their position paper. And we now count on the European Parliament to see this through until the end of the legislative proposal, because we have been coming with this ambitious capping and aggressivity every time around, and then, it's subject to negotiations. On the environmental sustainability, I want to say that the Commission really learned the lessons from the past, and we want to have a more comprehensive and flexible toolbox. So we want to mix better the annual and the multi-annual. We want to work better or link better the baseline, what is compulsory, with what is a top-up for some extra commitments of farmers, and to really help member states to define what they want to focus on in terms of protection of soil or water. So for them to define the protective practices and to see the transition payment, for example, so really to offer more flexibility also at national level. And finally, for social, because we really need to be brief, that is also where my daily work. I also want to underline the 2 topics mentioned in the paper, the animal welfare and the plant protection products. So it's very interesting to see the demands on the one hand from the society to tackle these issues and to ensure good level of standards. But at the same time, we always have to talk about it together with the international dimension. So it's not only about level playing field. It's not just that if we raise the bar for our farmers, then of course it increases the costs, at least in short term. But it's also about not bringing back into the EU, for example, plant protection products which are banned here. So it's not just about level playing field, it's also about the protection of health of the European consumers and citizens. These pesticides are banned in Europe for a reason, and they are not less toxic because they are used in a third country, be it even an underdeveloped country. So this is a difficult conversation. We must always keep in mind that there is the need to have this international dimension. And finally, just as a last word, if we want this future CAP to be truly impactful on the ground, we need advisory services for farmers. We need comprehensive and accessible support to all farmers everywhere in Europe. This is very, I would say, diverse depending on member state, and this is really key if we want to work on a future-oriented policy, and if we want to attract young farmers, because they need to not only be helped with the capital, they need to be support in terms of knowledge building, capacity building. So advisory services are paramount. I think, as usual, the proposal fell short of expectations, but I want to recall what the President said, we look into the future with hope. So we hope that this House will also support to fine-tune the proposal as needed. Luckily, we don't need to invent or not even reinvent the CAP. We just need to, well, make it truly what you want it to be for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna, for those words, and I'll go back to the pesticide point later in the discussion, as the journalist in me, I guess. Let's go back to last week's headlines. I would like to start with the discussions that happened in this House and the changes that were proposed that affect rural areas, agricultural budget. I want to hear from Jan and from Peter. What were your thoughts on such proposals? Jan.
Thank you. I was perhaps too brief in my opening words, so now I can go into more details. As you know, we weren't very happy with the Commission proposals in July. We had our first flash action at the day that these drafts were actually presented. And for us, it just wasn't enough. I already said that we're facing record high inflation. I think our costs have gone since last 5 years, I think, up by almost 50%. And this is, one side of the story, and the other side of the story is, as I mentioned, very low commodity prices on one hand, and on the other hand, you have quite high food prices, and this is something that was also discussed here, sometimes or mostly caused by the retailers and their pressure on farmers. So we really needed, let's say, a more ambitious proposal, both when it comes to budget on one hand, and when it comes to the regulation of the CAP rules on the other hand. So this was our stance in July, and we really hope that the last week discussions would bring, let's say, some constructive points to the table, something that would reflect our concerns. But we didn't really see it. What we saw was were cosmetic minor changes, which don't really address our main concerns. And our main concerns are, of course, the NRPP. So this is something that we are very much afraid of because this completely changes the game when it comes to decision making. It won't be just the ministers of agriculture making decisions, but it will be quite a difficult process and perhaps not all the same throughout all member states. It will depend on who's the Minister of Agriculture, who's the Prime Minister or the President, and also who's the Minister of Finance. So this is something that we don't think is the move in the right direction. And this wasn't addressed by the European Commission last week. And also we were and are still worried about the overall earmarking for the common agricultural policy, which was addressed, let's say, in a not satisfactory way for us, because we just heard that there's going to be additional 10% for rural development, and this is also, let's face it, not really the money that goes directly to farmers. And it's probably not enough if we're talking about 20% reduction, more than 50% if we account for inflation, another 10% just doesn't cut it for us. So this is another concern, and also the two-pillar structure. That is quite important for us. It was mentioned by Peter that we need a strong second pillar, which is able to facilitate generational renewal and is able to motivate farmers to perhaps do more for the environment. It is able to support farmers in mountainous areas facing difficulties with climate change and things like that. Also may be able to connect farmers to make them work together, to be able to face the pressure of the retailers. But we didn't get an adequate answer to our critique on not having a strong second pillar. So just to have a conclusion, for us it just isn't enough. And as I mentioned before, we hope that we will have a continuous discussion with your group also to be able to find a really good solution for farmers, which is not there at the moment, and I hope we will be able to find it. Thank you.
I think also the Socialist Group made clear last week that the solution for farmers is not there. So we heard that.
Thank you for that.
Peter, do you share similar concerns, and do you think there's something that can be done? Which further improvements in a more specific way would you like to see?
Yes, thank you very much. I don't think it's really up to me to give you advice on whether this amendment is enough to go or not go with a rejection vote of the entire proposal. Also knowing the fire you're playing then with from a political context. What for us really captured the message is that it's the first chain of changes which needs to be made in order to make this a workable proposal. The biggest miss for us in the letter that was sent by the President of the Commission was that there was little acknowledgement and little self-reflection on the methodology the Commission chose with this recommendation system, but also within the single plan. That was for us the biggest miss. Nevertheless, of course, it's positive steps. I have to be frank with that as well. It brings back some aspects on the active farmer definition, something we were missing before, the URL spending targets, and the return of the agricultural provisions to the CAP regulation. That is, from a governance perspective, it is important. Nevertheless, it remains fragmented. Not all of the CAP architecture is back in the NRP approach. There was nothing mentioned on ring fencing envelope for generational renewal. This option is still not given. The recommendation system still remains the basis for how this government system will deal with the member states, and that does something mostly with the position of the parliament. So further improvement must really come, and it must come from the council and the parliament. I'm afraid in the next phases. So the amendments of last week were not a huge political change, but they were very far from being enough for us. But you as Parliament have the power to change this in a better direction.
Thank you. And to Joanna, how do you reply to these concerns? And in particular, another concern from the S&D Group is that there could be a renationalization of the CAP because member states have more flexibility with less conditions. So it means the CAP could lose the C of common. How do you feel about that?
I think every time we try to give more subsidiarity and be more targeted or give more opportunities for member states to target the policy, we hear this. But of course, there is somewhere the right balance that we need to find, and that's what we also try to address with recommendations. So of course I hear, Peter, that it is it maybe creates uncertainty, but this is how we try to ensure that also the most pressing issues are addressed where they should be. And I can say that we of course have the overall policy objectives, and they are the same for everyone, and we will try to see with recommendations where attention should go in each member state to make sure that they are properly reflected on the ground. So we try to really strike the right balance between the flexibility and the commonality. Thank you.
And what about the lack of a level playing field? Because I've also heard that from member states. When it comes to the green architecture, to sustainability, they are concerned that this can create an uneven situation among them. Is that concern, justified?
But I think already the starting points are very different, because if you look at farm structure in member states, if you look at problems that they face, they face different problems, and that's why that's one of the reasons we try to give them more flexibility to be more strategic about addressing their real pressing issues at national level. How to ensure level playing field? Again, I think degressivity and capping, for example, is one of the good tools that I would flag here. So it's also a matter of really finding the solutions at national level, because there are also many differences between farm sizes at national level, and that also needs to be seen at national level. Thank you.
Yeah, and going to Czechia, you mentioned that your farm is small for Czechia but big for the European Union. So I'm sure it's one of those member states that is not that keen on capping and the aggressivity?
It's funny a little bit when we're hearing commissions speak about level playing field and providing flexibility to member states, and then on the other hand we have the same capping for the entire European Union. So it doesn't make sense from our point of view, because we have a different history, we have a different structure, and just not Czech Republic. You can go all around Europe, to Spain, to Germany, to certain parts of Italy, France. It's just you don't have one size fits all capping that would be really fair to all countries and all member states. You also have to look at one thing, and it is the Commission itself is speaking about food security. And especially, I would have to draw from the example of Czechia. In some countries, and for example, Czechia, you have bigger farms providing food security. We have around 95% of all dairy cows in farms above 500 hectares, which would be very much affected by capping or regressivity. They would be probably more or less cut off. And it's even worse when you look at pig production or pork production, which has declined significantly since the 1990s. And I believe we're right now at 1.3 million pigs, and we used to be at 4 million pigs in 1990. So you have a quite steep decline. And it's making problems even for small farmers, because small farmers usually tend to be focused on simple arable crops such as wheat or barley. So now they can't sell it directly to pig producers, and they have to export it to countries like Germany or Belgium or Denmark, to bigger producers. And they have to compete with global producers for very low prices. So I think to have some sort of domestic food security on national or regional level is also a concern, not just for farmers, but I would say for the public as a whole. So I don't think capping or regressivity is a good reason, and I already mentioned it. We have to look at the global competitiveness level, because on the other hand, you have Commission finishing up treaties with Mercosur and Ukraine, and these farms are huge. Compared to our farm size. I mentioned 120 hectares is perhaps a big farm on the European level, small farm at Czech level, but it would be dwarfed by the sizes we see in Brazil, Argentina, or Ukraine. I think the top 10 farms in Ukraine are all above 100,000 hectares. The biggest one is 800,000 hectares. So if we are to compete with them, I don't think capping is a good idea. And also one thing I would like to mention, and it's perhaps something that could be addressed at national level. The challenge right now is that more than 50% of the money that farmers get, regarding the size, they end up in somebody else's pocket. It can be retailers. It can also be landowners. It just depends. If you have any sort of public support, it sometimes increases cost for farmers. But it is something that can probably be addressed more on national level than on the European one.
Thank you for that. Yeah, for sure, trade enlargement, those are difficult issues. That will be for a whole different panel, to be honest. Going to Peter, do you think that capping and aggressivity and using that money for the farmers that need it, that's what Hansen says, like young farmers, do you think that's the solution? Or do you think there are other measures that could be proposed or reinforced in the current proposal to help young farmers like yourself?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. For us, the main argument or the main priority is that the cap money, the cap support ends up at the farms who are staying, farms of active farmers. So when it comes to the better targeting, the first filter we would like to use is the active farmer definition, making a stronger active farmer definition. Then when it comes to the further support, and of course you have a lot of interventions which also have a big bias towards active farms, investment support, risk management, all these interventions which are also in this new CAP regulation, they land on active farms of young farmers, farms who are who want to stay farming for the next decades to come. Then when it comes to the direct payment support, but also the environmental support, the discussion on capping and degressivity, it is very important to what extent are we mixing both environmental and income support measures. For us, if a farmer does something for the environment and we have specific environmental measures, the logic of capping is not there too much, because it should be a cost forgone, and if a big farmer does 10 measures, then he should receive 10 money because it's doing something for the environment. But when it comes to socio-economic support, yeah, then looking at socio-economic parameters makes much more sense. What has been polluting this discussion of capping for the last period is that we have a mixture of socio-economic and environmental measures. And that is what making this discussion difficult in the context of the last proposal. So if we succeed in this new negotiation in making environmental measures for tailored and better targeted at environmental goals, and socio-economic measures tailored and targeted at socio-economic goals, then this discussion of capping also becomes much more logical, and then we're also much more open to using the instrument.
Joanna, do you have something to say on this separation of environment and socio-economic?
I think it's obviously very important to be comprehensive, and we heard the voices that for the capping and aggressivity we need to better take into account the costs, labor and others. So for sure this is an important parameter. Now, well, the proposal is not in the hands of the Commission anymore, so we take note, but we encourage the lawmakers to follow up. Thank you.
And then going back to the level playing field with third countries that Jan mentioned too, about imports, and there's a lot of discussion about the vision for the future in agriculture when it comes to the reciprocity on pesticides and animal welfare, and we are all looking at the food safety omnibus as the ideal vessel to deliver that commitment, at least on pesticides. Should we expect any movement on that front when it comes to reciprocity? I am aware this is DG Sante, but I'm also aware that you're in close coordination with them in DG Agri to draft this omnibus.
But you know that we expect the proposal to be on the table in December, so then all the information will be in the public domain. Now we can base ourselves on what Commissioner Varhelyi anticipated, and he made a political commitment that it will be addressed. So, still, this is just the starting point, the same like with the CAP. We need to then see how this proposal will be discussed by the co-legislators, and then to see if reciprocity or defending farmers, but also, as I said, consumers, is important enough, or the trade considerations take over the debate. So I think, again, we will have to discuss with different constituencies.
Also, now going to simplification, it seems like the Omnibus 3, that was the agricultural omnibus, was quite, successful. It went very fast compared to the other omnibus, and there was general agreement in the Parliament on the proposed changes. What are you expecting, Jan, from future omnibus on environment, but also food safety?
Yeah, I would to make it short, a further simplification. It's a short-term answer to what we're facing at the moment. As I mentioned a couple of times today, the rising costs. We can definitely make do with some simplification. As I believe that there is actually a statistic that says that you need at least, I think, one workforce per every 400 hectares just to deal with the red tape. Because there's a lot of it at the moment. And also to be on the equal footing or equal playing field with the rest of the world, we need to provide farmers with the right tools. So we expect Commission the next omnibus to be ambitious in this, because there is actually new tools and new techniques that could help farmers. For example, when we're talking about drones application of plant protection products is something that we're very much interested in, and we hope to see this in the upcoming package. And also, you mentioned reciprocity, but I think it would be a good starting point to have some reciprocity among member states, because at the moment, when you have a company that tries to register a substance in, for example, Belgium, you also need the same company to register the same substance in Slovakia, Poland, or any other country. So I believe if this is automatical and it is just usable on day one for all the farmers, across Europe, or at least in the same climate region, so to speak, this would also be very helpful. There is also some concerns when it comes to things like nitrate directive. This can be made more simpler for farmers, but we also understand that we have some environmental, let's say, demands on farmers, so we'd like to keep the ambitions, but at the same time make it less costly for farmers to adhere to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Sometimes the line is thin on simplification. Socialists have supported simplification in agriculture, but not the regulation. So, Peter, where do you think this line should be drawn in coming proposals?
Yes, I'm actually quite happy that this question is also on the table. Maybe first to start, of course, simplification by default is always better than making something very complicated. I think that is quite logical, so to say. Nevertheless, farming is not simple, dus I can also understand that some of the regulations are not very simple. What we as young farmers really miss in this simplification discussion is the honesty that on one hand we have still legally binding environmental goals in the Nitrate Directive, in the Water Framework Directive, in the Habitat Directive, but on the other hand the measures to meet these goals, we're just simplifying that, but we're doing nothing with the goal. And I'm not saying we should abolish the goal, but as long as you are not helping my generation, my farms, to meet the target, then what are we simplifying? To take an example, the Water Framework Directive. The deadline is 2027. We have no idea what happens if member states are not meeting the deadline in 2027. It looks like most member states won't meet it. Does it mean that my farm is going to be sued because I'm not meeting any of these goals? The discussion about simplification without in combination also discussing how are we going to meet goals, what are we going to do with the targets which are in these goals, is in my opinion a dishonest discussion.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting point, clarity on what you have to achieve as well, not only in how. Joanna, any reaction to that?
Yes, we are always in the hotspot. I agree that this is difficult. We try to deliver simplifying the rules. Of course, we need to find exactly this balance between the regulation and meeting the expectations of the society about overall sustainability in the longer term, and hopefully provide the right assistance that farmers can meet the obligations. But of course, it's not only about farmers, and we try to the extent possible exclude farmers, and especially small farmers, from these obligations, which already raises a lot of, or considerable resistance. We try to focus the obligations on bigger economic entities. So this is how we try to, let's say, find the balance. Thank you.
And then moving a bit more to food for a moment, I would like to recall one of the announcements of President von der Leyen during the State of the Union speech, one of the few remarks, to be honest, that she made about farming and food. That was the new Buy European campaign. We haven't heard much about it. Could you maybe give us any hint?
No, thank you, and it's really above my pay grade to say anything. I can just say that we already do have a promotion policy in the CAP, so we hope to enhance and work more with that, because, of course, the quality of European food products is known internationally. So I think this is really the strength we want to build on.
Thank you. Sorry for the awkward question. Jan, what would you like to see from such a plan? Because it could put in the spotlight European food at a time when we are signing trade agreements with many international partners.
That's exactly what we're always telling the decision makers on the national level and also the media, that what we see in signing these agreements is a hypocrisy, because you have very high demands on European farmers on one hand, and on the other hand you're telling us that we need to import more food from Mercosur countries, from Ukraine and regions like that. So what we would like to see is a support for a local production, and for this local production to be placed on local markets, not just in retailers, because that's sometimes very hard to do, because they also sometimes prefer bigger partners, so bigger farms. So you have this discussion about capping, but they also like to work more with, let's say, bigger farms, sometimes outside of the EU. But we would like to see local production, for example, in hospitals, in schools. So perhaps some guidelines, it can perhaps be done on national level, or we can have some sort of white book or let's say an instruction manual at the European level. This is one thing. And another thing, and it may be a part of a different debate, is what we always mention, and it can underline this whole discussion, is that there is a so-called triangle, we like to call it. I think it was first used in architecture, that you can never have three, but only the two at the same time. And when this triangle says that it's fast, good, and cheap, if you build something, you can do it fast and good, but it won't be cheap. And the same goes for food. You can have cheap food on one side, then non-subsidized food, and also let's say environmental cautious food. So you can have environmental cautious and subsidized, and then can be cheap for the customer. But you can have it not subsidized, which is something that we're, I think, discussing at the moment. So if we want to still provide quality, environmental cautious food for customers or the whole society, not just in the EU, but let's say worldwide, I think that keeping the cap at least the current level, maybe adjusting for inflation, should be our number one priority.
That's a very nice way to connect those two topics. I think we can give the floor to each of the speakers to close this first panel. So, Peter, if you would like to speak with some final remarks, something that you couldn't share, you didn't get to share.
Yes, and I already said it also a bit in my introduction speech. The months and maybe years to come are going to be very determined for how we're going to see the future of the common agricultural policy. And then the final message on that is involve us as much as possible in the ambition you're having for the cap, how you're negotiating, and what your plan is, because it helps in the negotiation game, and it helps us in our advocacy and representation. So let that be my last message.
Joanna, what's your last message?
This is just the beginning, so it's good to collect views and take it forward. And I think there is a lot of work to be done, so it's good to be open to arguments and to hear each other out. Thank you.
And Jan?
I think I'm just going to connect on what I said previously. Right now, I think the biggest challenge is to, from the political point of view, is to do it fast, to have it all ready by 2027. But I would like to urge you to be ambitious, and as Peter said, to engage in dialogue with those who are concerned, with the stakeholders. And for that, I believe we would very much like to prefer for things to be done correctly than to be done very fast. So we're here and we're ready to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very nice to hear such openness among the speakers. And yes, dialogue will be key in the coming years that we will be following this. So thank you very much. And I'm going to move to the second panel, Agriculture for the Future, Protecting Farmers and Our Planet. So I'm going to call Marian Bloom, Andoni Garcia Arriola, Celia Nisens-James, and Enrico Somaglia.
Thank you.
Actually, it seems like we may have time for one or two questions from the audience, if interested. Hello. Will anyone like to ask questions about what was discussed? Well, we'll move to the second panel and we can go back to the questions at the end again. Yeah, so let's get started. I'm going to give the floor first to Marian Bloom, Vice President of IFAM Organics Europe, an expert on organic greenhouse standards, who has worked to bring together the EU and American organic movements, as well as to promote local organic food in her home city of Utrecht. So the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation. And I have to start up my presentation. Sorry. Paper is better. Huh? So, before I start my intervention, I would like to tell you that as IFAM Organics Europe, we do subscribe the recommendations of the Food Policy Coalition that will be presented after me. But ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the Parliament and visitors, the organic food and farming movement really congratulates the Socialist Group for such a comprehensive and progressive position paper. And indeed, it is really urgent to bring our food system in line with planetary boundaries and social justice, and to dedicate our common policy instruments to supporting our farmers to adopt more sustainable practices. And we support the analysis that the needed transition cannot rest only on the shoulders of farmers on the one hand and the consumers that want to pay more on the other hand, but we need a whole production chain approach, a food system approach. And we need coherent policies to address the production, the market and the food industry. And organic food and farming plays an important role in achieving many goals. As you probably know, organic is the only legally regulated agroecological system in the EU, and as such it is an essential public policy tool to drive the transformation towards sustainable agri-food systems in the EU. So, supporting organic farming is the most efficient way to improve the sustainability of EU agricultural systems. Because in that way you reward farmers for environmental benefits they deliver. By this you answer to the rationale of public money for public goods. So supporting organic farming also has positive effects on the whole agricultural sector. It can inspire by innovative practices and thereby improve the sustainability of conventional practices. Supporting organic through the Common Agricultural Policy must be adequate to both farmers that are already organic and the ones that want to become organic. So naturally, we welcome the recognition of the development of organic farming as an environmental and climate priority area in the CAP proposal. And particularly the European Organic Movement welcomes the fact that member states have the obligation to set up conversion and maintenance payments for organic in their national regional partnership plans. But we are worried that this obligation comes without any substantial budget attached. And the support to organic needs to be connected with a realistic ambition of growth in each member state. And in order to support this growth, the demand-side policies are crucial to boost the demand for organic products. So, and that is why AFOAM Organics Europe, in the context of the next MFF and CAP, really calls for a renewal of the European Action Plan to continue the good actions and the good policies that have already started in 2021. It's maybe interesting that I call for an organic action plan in the context of the CAP and the MFF, but coming from the Netherlands, I can see that an organic action plan really helped to boost the growth of the sector. And I will give you some examples of my home country, where in 2022, our Ministry of Agriculture published a national organic action plan being encouraged by the EU Organic Action Plan. Many member states did it. And also by the strategic plans, the CAP strategic plans they had to draw up. So our government introduced a national ambition of 15% organic land area by 2030. And it mirrored the EU Action Plan. So it also contained actions to support supply side, the demand side, and knowledge development. And on the demand side, we saw that, well, our government did many actions. They started, for example, a national consumer campaign. And it also encouraged retailers, so the market, the supermarkets, to promote their organic products at the same moment. And interestingly, there is now also the initiative of a privately funded consumer campaign financed by organic companies that will be added to this national campaign to make the message even stronger. And last summer, with the help of the National Action Plan support, we could call out our first bio city, organic city. There are many cities in Europe that went before us. Notably, Italy is a very strong country in having organic regions, organic cities. Germany also, France, and in the Netherlands, it's Zutphen, the place where I went to school. Coincidence. And one of the ambitions there is that the city will prefer organic farmers on their agricultural land. And they also have an ambition for the organic food procurement in their canteen. And also the city of Amsterdam just concluded an agreement with 20 large employers, like the university and other ones, to promote healthy food, of which organic food is part. And it's this kind of encouragement that is important in our country, given the nitrogen crisis, given the economic instability, and not a very clear look on the future possibilities. So it's enabling farmers to see their future, because there is a market. And without a strong ambition on EU level and an action plan on EU level, this would never have been possible. So that is my focus point. And of course, there are other things in the new CAP and in the S&D plans that are really helpful. The generational renewal and the funding of research, for instance. The developing organic agriculture and ensuring generational renewal, they go hand in hand. 21% of organic farmers are young farmers, and close to half of new entrants start organic farms. In Austria, the country with the highest share of organic land, 27%, also has the highest share of young farmers. And finally, the next MFF would also need to ensure that research money will be dedicated to agriculture, and specifically to organic farming and agroecology, through the European Competitiveness Fund and through the research framework, the next research framework. And the current Commission's commitment to dedicate 30% of the research and innovation money to agri-food and agroecological research, I think it should remain in the next MFF. So I conclude. The whole food value chain needs to engage in this transition. And farmers engaged in sustainable methods of production, such as organic farmers, should be remunerated adequately for the ecosystem services they provide, and they should have access to a market and paid fairly by the market for the food they are producing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. Now I'm going to give the floor to Andoni García Riola, a member of the Executive Board of the European Coordination Via Campesina, who is also a livestock farmer from Spain. He participates actively in the working groups organized on the CAP, public policies, trade and communication, and he has also served as a member of the European Economic and Social Committee from 2015 to 2022. So, Andoni, adelante, the floor is yours.
Buenos días a todas y...
Good morning to all of you. And I'd like to thank the Social Democrat Group for this invitation and to the coordinator for agriculture. I represent small and medium-sized farmers, also peasants, people in the peasant movement and family farming. So we represent a farming model based on social sustainability and also on standing up for better sustainability and moving towards an agro-environmental approach. So, on behalf of the ECVC, I can pick up on the questions that we've been asked. We've been asked to comment on the social dimension of the current CAP and also the proposal that has been made. And then at the same time, we're also looking at what is required in order for us to achieve a fair and viable green transition. So the view of ECVC is that the current common agricultural policy does not meet the requirements in terms of the social dimension. It continues to follow objectives of increasing competitiveness in global markets. And looking at those elements, in general terms, the payments that are made tend to go to larger farms through per hectare payments, and they do not guarantee decent conditions for workers. In ECVC, we believe that farm policy should include social conditionality in all sectors and should protect the over 10 million farmers and workers involved, including migrant and seasonal workers. We agree with the Socialist and Democrat policy that CAP should be a driver of social and territorial cohesion, supporting active farmers, including small and medium-sized farms, young people and women. It should have a strong budget to back it, and we should preserve the two pillars of the CAP. ECVC would also say that in order to have a strong CAP, we need to ensure that we have a strong CMO regulation and the ability to regulate important markets. So how can we ensure that we have a just and economically viable transition? For ECVC, the transition to more sustainable models does need to be just, inclusive and viable, of course. And what that means is that we need fair prices as a basis for farmers' incomes. To achieve that, we need to ensure that we have market regulation and contracts including prices which will cover production costs. We want a budget which redistributes to smaller or medium-sized farms with a cap on aid of €60,000, and payments should be directed to active farmers. For ECVC, that means people who live and make a living from mainly in agriculture. There should also be a compulsory minimum of €5,000 for smaller farms. The transition should also include taking into account generational change, access to land, gender. These points should be included in CAP in order to get rid of the discrimination affecting women, for example, in farming. If we don't have young people and women in farming, then there is no future in rural areas. But the transition cannot be fair if we do not pick up on the key problem of low prices received by farmers, and this is due, amongst other things, to the imports which arrive, low-price imports coming into the EU which do not comply with the regulations in force in the EU. So in order to tackle that problem, we need to ensure that we have stringent regulations in place, and we should be willing to question free trade agreements such as Mercosur, which could displace small and medium-sized farmers in favour of a large-scale agricultural model, Uberization of agriculture, for example, as we have heard from COA. So, in that context, we would emphasise the proposals that the Social Democrats have been making in their policy documents. For example, when it comes to market regulation, we think that is an important point if we are to make more progress on these issues. So these are points that we wanted to pick up on. The free trade agreements could undermine our food sovereignty. That is why we think it's important to have transition measures in place, and those measures should have adequate funding. We do want to see a strong budget, but at the same time, when we're talking about simplification, that ought not to mean deregulation. So we want to ensure that there are standards in place, clear standards. We agree with the Social Democrats that the future of European agriculture is that it should be based on solidarity, social justice, sustainability and food sovereignty. For ECVC, we would also emphasise the transition, that the way forward should be to greater sustainability and to agroecology. Thank you.
Yes, Andoni.
Thank you.
Let's move to Celia Nissens-James, part of the Executive Board of the EU Food Policy Coalition, an association working for sustainable food systems in Europe. She also leads the EEB's work, the European Environmental Bureau's work on agriculture and food, covering the CAP, climate action in agriculture and food systems transition. Celia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. So indeed, I work for the EEB, which is the largest network of environmental NGOs in Europe. But I'm here today representing the Food Policy Coalition, which brings together 63 organizations, including all my co-panelists, and NGOs, grassroots social movements, farmers, organizations, think tanks, etc. Lucky coincidence, yesterday the FPC launched a shared vision for the Post-2027 CAP, which was endorsed by 33 organizations, including both NGOs and farming organizations. And I will be presenting these today. I will go quite quickly over the first three because they have been covered a lot already, and we'll focus a bit more on the last three of the six shared demands that these organizations have put together. And you will probably notice I won't keep referring to it, but there is quite a lot of convergence between the position and the demands that we have landed on as civil society and what we read in the S&D vision, which we were very pleased to see. So the first point is, as we've heard already, we really need to make farmers' income support fairer. And so this is also in line with what was recommended by the strategic dialogue, and it means essentially a strict retargeting of income support to the farmers who need it, but also embedding this in a long-term perspective to move away from area-based income support payments, which are just not fit for purpose, and that has been already said many times over the years. The second key demand or recommendation is to work towards fairer prices for farmers, so through the Common Market Organization regulation as well as the Unfair Trading Practices Directive that has been covered. And then the third, which we have heard a bit about and we'll hear more about, is to address the social crises that are facing our sector. So on one hand, the huge issues with unfair treatment of workers, and so really strengthening social conditionality, but on the other hand also addressing the aging of the sector and promoting generational renewal through the CAP. Now, our fourth joint demand when it comes to the CAP also echoes what was in the S&D vision, which is that we can't leave farmers alone in the transition. And so we really have to make sure that this CAP is doing more when it comes to supporting farmers and to helping them restore agroecosystems to improve their own resilience. Quite concretely, what this should look like is, on one hand, that we cannot see any backtracking when it comes to the amount of money, of public funding that is dedicated to supporting farmers to implement more environmentally and climate-friendly practices on their farms compared to what we have now. But also we need to be increasing this amount over time. The challenges are not going away and they're only going to get worse. So we really have to up our game gradually. And this was also, again, what was recommended by the strategic dialogue. We found that the farm transition instrument that was proposed by the Commission is quite an interesting addition to the toolbox. But again, if it doesn't come with adequate budget, it won't deliver what it can and should deliver. It won't deliver on its potential. And here we'd like to also flag two key transitions that we see need to be prioritized in this CAP. On one hand, we have to look at moving away from industrialized or factory animal production, which is causing huge suffering for animals, but also harmful pollution in many parts of Europe. And it's also actually making the sector highly vulnerable to economic and trade shocks because of the dependency of this model of production on feed imports. And then on the other hand, we also have to look at reducing our dependency on external inputs, such as synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, which, as the S&D paper pointed out, have been driving up food prices in recent years and jeopardize also our strategic autonomy. So these are two key challenges that are facing the sector, and we have to really support farmers to move towards organic farming, extensive and high welfare farming systems, and agroecological methods, because we know that this will be better for our environment, for our health, but also for our own security. The fifth key demand is that we really have to get serious about eliminating harmful subsidies in the CAP. In a context of tight budgets, and money doesn't grow on trees, as we all know, so of course we can try and get more money in the budget, but we have to use the money that we have better and ensure that we're not spending any public funding on subsidies that are undermining our collective objectives. So concretely, what we are calling for is to strengthen the farm stewardship system, to ensure a level playing field across the EU and ensure that this level playing field is also setting a strict do no harm baseline for all CAP subsidies, both socially and environmentally again. But then also there should be stricter safeguards against harmful subsidies, such as for factory animal production or unsustainable irrigation, which we know our systems are still benefiting from public funding at the moment, and that really has to be phased out. And then our final demand, sorry, I'm going through these quite quickly, but of course I look forward to the discussion afterwards, is that we need to make sure that the rules are right, the instruments are well designed, but then we also have to make sure that the governance is correct, is robust. And so this means really moving to real performance in the CAP through a proper monitoring and evaluation framework, proper indicators, stronger accountability for member states on how the money is spent, and inclusive public participation both in the development of the national plans, but then also further down the line in how they are implemented, and allowing stakeholders to really scrutinize and be part of this process. And these things are absolutely key if we want to ensure that this CAP is delivering on our objectives and is also retaining some legitimacy in the public eye. Thank you.
Thank you, Zelia. Now we're going to go to Enrico Somaglia, the General Secretary of EFAT, the European Federation of Food, Agriculture and Tourism Trade Unions. He joined EFAT in 2013 as coordinator for transnational companies, and later he assumed key responsibilities in EU policy coordination. And today, as Secretary General, he champions social conditionality in EU agricultural policy, as has been mentioned by previous speakers, and advocates for workers' rights. So, Enrico, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting the trade unions to this important event. Well, I will start by maybe giving some figures about the conditions that agricultural workers face nowadays in the agriculture sector, because I think it's very important that we start from that point also to try to understand also how the common agricultural policy can eventually be a tool to also help in raising labor standards in these sectors. So the agriculture sector remains one of the most precarious and challenging sectors of the economy. We still have, unfortunately, very high levels of undeclared or underdeclared work. We are around 32% on average across Europe. It remains a sector where we have very high levels of accidents at work, so very low health and safety standards. We have about 500 deaths across Europe per year, more than 150,000 accidents. And it's a sector where we still face deplorable conditions, very low wages, a vast proportion of seasonal workers, particularly in some countries, that are completely excluded by social security contribution, for example. And then we have an important proportion, a growing proportion of workers that are mobile and migrant. And there we can find really everything. We find very high levels, indeed, once again, of undeclared work. But we also find deplorable housing conditions, for example. And I was this summer, together with Camilla Lauretti, that is here with us, for example, to visit one of the informal settlements where many farm workers live. This settlement is the one of Borgo Mezzanone in the south of Italy. There we have 5,000, 6,000 workers living in particular during the summer period, but they are present throughout the whole year. And we can find exactly the same in the south of Spain, in the Manolada region in Greece. We can find deplorable conditions actually also looking in the northern part of Italy, with the abuses that are particularly led by also gangmasters, so irregular labor intermediation. So this is the picture, and I think if we read then the vision on agriculture and food, one of the ambitions of the European Union is to make the sector more attractive. So I think the question is how? The question is what can the European Union do? And of course, there are many tools. The common agricultural policy is not the only one. I think we can group these tools into three main block of measures. The first one is in the area of social policy. It's very important that we strengthen collective bargaining and we raise wages, particularly minimum wages. And in this respect, we have a very important directive, which is the Directive on Minimum Wage, that the court has just pronounced itself on it, safeguarding basically the whole directive. We need also to very much intervene in tackling gangmaster practices, illegal labor intermediation, because this is the situation that we have in the agriculture sector. We have gangmasters that charge workers enormous fees for travel, for accommodation, for housing sometimes, and we need a directive, and this is what the EFAT is demanding in the framework of the Quality Jobs Roadmap. Actually, we have drafted already a model directive, and we will be manifesting in front of Strasbourg, the European Parliament, on the 20th of January, together with other sector union federations. We need absolutely to extend social security. We need to have clear provision on housing. And we need much more, yeah? But then we also need measures that need to tackle, and this is my the second block of measures that have to address those long-standing issues that affect the agro-food chain, and in particular the most vulnerable actors across the agro-food chain, which are in particular small farmers and agricultural workers. And in this respect, we need absolutely measures to tackle the process of concentration and financialization that affect the whole agro-food chain, from agrochemical, fertilizers, but also then looking at the retail system, because there is a huge power imposed by retailers on farmers and small farmers, and I think this should be really a key priority also for the S&D Group, not only looking at the Unfair Trading Practices Directive, but really doing more in this respect. We need a much more balanced approach to trade agreements. I think almost the whole agricultural community was against Mercosur, yet the Commission was going in the direction of signing the Mercosur deal. We are not against trade per se. Trade is a fantastic tool also to ensure peace across the world, and we know how much we need peace in this very moment. But the agriculture sector, we cannot forget that is a specific sector of the economy, particularly exposed to shocks, particularly exposed to unfair competition. So just approaching trade in food and in agriculture as if it is like trading a T-shirt or a car, it doesn't work. We need a completely different approach. We are also very worried, by the way, about the agreement with the Trump administration. This can cost thousands of jobs in sectors like the winery, like olive oil, like the dairy sector, particularly in some countries. And then the third pillar to tackle and to raise labour standards in the agriculture sector is the common agriculture policy. It is part of it. And it is a very important tool because it is about the money that support the sector. And I think in this respect, it's very important that we talk about resources. From EFAT side, from the trade union movement side, we are very worried to see that actually we are spending more and more in weapons. And of course, I'm not entering into the discussion. We are not naive. We understand that security goes also through defense. But I think we cannot accept that this goes at the detriment of the fight of the EU for social justice, for workers' rights, for environmental justice, because this is actually what is happening. If we cut the money for the common agricultural policy, if we cut the money for the European Social Fund, if we cut the money for cohesion funds. This is the message that we are sending to European citizens. And in this respect, the money are important, but even more importantly, for this group, must be how the money are spent. I don't hear enough about that. There is a big debate about budget. It's important, but let's not forget how the money are spent. And thanks to the S&D Group, of course, taking up the fight from the trade union movement and other allies, it was possible to include in the common agricultural policy, in the last reform, the principle of social conditionality. A very important principle that can help in raising labour standards in the sector, but also in tackling social dumping, unequal treatment. So it's not only good for farm workers, it's also good for farmers. Let's not forget about it, because the vast proportion of farmers respect workers' rights, but face unfair competition from a minority that don't do that. And in this respect, we have clear priorities, and I will conclude. It's crucial and important, and I know that it's in your document as well, but crucial and important that social conditionality, it is further strengthened. We need to ensure that we have sanctions that are truly dissuasive, not like at the moment that we have 2, 3, 4%. This doesn't affect anything. This is not going to have to play any role. We need to ensure that we strengthen the scope of social conditionality. At the moment, it's very limited. We have only 3 directives on health and safety. There are other social policy measures at European level that can be part of it. It's very important that we find a way to increase labour inspections. It's not acceptable that in some region 0.1% of CAP beneficiaries receive inspections on working conditions. Without enforcement, there is not respect. We can have all the rights that we want, all the fantastic collective agreements that we want, but then if there is not some sort of enforcement, this doesn't deliver. And it's very bad, once again, for those farmers that are the vast majority that respect workers' rights. And then we also believe that we need a different approach to how payments are made. It's not enough to look at eligible hectare criteria. It's not enough to look at the number of animals. If we are really serious about making the CAP fairer, then we need to include, at least partially, other criteria. And for us, another element which has to be part of this is the fact that the level of payments to farmers should be based not only on this criteria but also on the employment aspect, so the number of declared worked hours, the social security contributions that are paid. These are costs for farmers, and if I create good employment, I should be remunerated also through the CAP for that, not only looking at the extension of my land, knowing that many do not have actually any real activity. I conclude by saying that this CAP must be an opportunity to strengthen the social dimension, but I also want to say and to warn the S&D Group that the Commission has taken an opposite direction, unfortunately. Because also when it comes to the social dimension, not only all our demands are not taken into consideration, not only social conditionality is not strengthened, but it is actually weakened, because they are proposing an exemption for small farmers under the principle, once again, of simplification. But the message that we send is that if I'm small, I can violate workers' rights. Yeah? And there is also the principle of double penalty. So the fact that if I have already been sanctioned by labor law for those directives that are part of the social conditionality scope, then this sanction should be taken into account in the sanction that apply for social conditionality, which, let's not forget, is again 2, 3, 4%, so very, very weak. We are sending a very weak message. If the simplification attempt, the simplification is actually at the end, and we see it concretely with these changes, an attack on workers' rights, where the European Union is really taking the wrong way. Yeah? And the message that we are sending to citizens is that workers' rights, labor standards, environmental standards are an obstacle to grow. But actually they are the engine that have made this part of the world still the best place to live. So let's keep this into account. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enrico. And just to kick off the discussion, I would like to go to this point of the sticks and carrots that we used to hear a lot towards the end of the previous mandate. The EU is often blamed by using a lot of sticks, by not rewarding farmers. And I want to hear from you if you think that the current CAP proposal offers meaningful incentives for farmers if the carrots are there, because some sticks are now gone. So, Celia?
The answer is quite simple, no. Indeed, we've been promised a move from conditions to incentives, I think was the wording. What we're seeing is we're removing the conditions and we're not actually strengthening the incentives at all. They could even be strongly weakened, as I said, with some of the ring fencing and the levels of payments that the Commission has proposed. We could see up to 90% of the budget going to socioeconomic support measures, leaving almost nothing for supporting farmers in the transition. So it is a betrayal on farmers, honestly. So what we're calling for, as I mentioned, is really we need to have ring fencing for environmental measures. I mean, this is also about the commonality of the CAP, isn't it, right? We're all talking about our fears that member states will all do their own thing and we will have a race to the bottom. We can address that by setting certain rules within the framework at EU level and by strengthening the farm stewardship system so that, again, we have a level playing field, but also by setting certain minimum spending on environmental measures common across all member states. This is really the starting point. Without that, we're heading for disaster. And I mean, I say we as in society and farmers, because they are seeing the impacts of climate change, as we've heard already several times. And this is not going away.
Andoni, how do you see as a farmer this, lack of conditionality or these changes in the environmental conditions from the current CAP framework to the new proposal? How have you lived the conditions during this mandate, well, the GAEX, and what do you think of what's being proposed?
Desde ECBC vemos, por una parte,
in ECVC, firstly, when we're talking about conditionality and the current cap, our understanding is that we're looking at the regulations and standards, but the problem has been the tools that are then put in place to enforce them. And then at the same time, who is actually the target of these regulations? There is a more social, sustainable, environmental model of agriculture, but that's not what we have. As farmers, we haven't felt that the regulations are really there to help us. And if you look at the new proposal now, the same applies. These proposals are made to support a model of agriculture. Does it really face the challenges that we have as small and medium-sized farmers, or the challenges that European citizens face when it comes to the climate, or obtaining food, animal welfare, or ensuring that people can get access to food? I think the answer to that is that the measures and proposals are not trying to achieve those things. So who could respond to this? I think if you look at the current conditionalities in place, it's going to be much easier for large businesses to meet some of these rules. And yet it wouldn't help to make our farming more environmentally friendly. And then if you look at the new CAP, farmers can choose certain objectives, but again, you don't have the right regulations in place. We're not able to set out a clear way forwards, and we don't really feel that we're included in this system. And at the same time, there is a constant contradiction. The current CAP has had inherent contradictions vis-à-vis trade policy. It's been subject to the trade policy. And when we're looking at the current proposal and what is happening with the free trade agreements, what we see is that we're continuing along the road with this contradiction, this policy contradiction, and ultimately it will drive out small and medium-sized farms. It will push us towards larger scale models. And there, we don't really feel that we have a place in that system. And that kind of contradictory policy really undermines the objectives. So there are objectives where we would agree with other people in Europe, but those objectives are being undermined. So we're very much critical of what has been proposed. And we still have time, we think, to make a change.
And on the issue of sustainability, there are some initiatives that have been mentioned also in the vision for food and agriculture, and some of them are the nature credits or sustainability benchmarking that, to be honest, is quite mysterious to me. I don't have a lot of information about it. Could this really play a role in becoming the carrot or the additional support that farmers are looking for? Maybe if one could reply to it.
Yeah, I think. Is it okay now? Yes. Also, in the current CAP and in the current policy, or the previous policy, I should say, there is a lot of interest in trying to get a sustainability benchmark or something to measure farmers against. And I think it's good that there is this initiative to develop indicators on what is real sustainable farming. And it could indeed be a way to reward farmers doing good. But what we see time and again and there's also the fear now that when you develop such an indicator, that it's very much focused on the traditional things like if you have as much output with as little input possible, then you're doing good, then you're doing sustainable, then you're sustainable in an economic way. And what we as IFOAM are also promoting is if you are trying to measure sustainability, you need to have this broad set of indicators that truly measure sustainable agriculture and food production. And as we always say, that there is already a model out there which is called organic agriculture, which is one example, and it is already certified, controlled on every step of the production chain until the supermarket level. So thinking about sustainability, yes, you need to develop this model. It should be done in the right way, but also think about rewarding the ones who are already doing good. And the real threat is that if you think about some sustainability instrument that measures sustainability purely in economic terms, that the ones that are already doing good on the broad definition of sustainability, and you need this broad, you need farmers working in a broad way on sustainability. Otherwise, you will never achieve your goals for water quality, for biodiversity, for a good and social form of agriculture. There is always this risk of, instead of rewarding them, of having them being dropped out. Sorry for my English.
No problem. Also, going back to the simplification discussion, I will be interested maybe in what Celia, but also Enrico has to say, because I'm not aware, to be honest, if there are any aspects of social conditionality that could be further weakened in the current CAP. Could you enlighten me on that?
Well, they tried. So there has been a clear attempt to attack social conditionality with the simplification package that has accompanied, is now in trialogue negotiation. No? So the simplification package for the CAP. And I think this is really sending a clear message once again. When we say that simplification is the regulation, it's not just a slogan, it's what we experience in reality. I think we are all against bureaucracy. When bureaucracy is paperwork, when bureaucracy is unnecessary burden, this is clear. I mean, who can be in favor? But how can you explain? Let's take the example of the vote last week in the European Parliament in the plenary on the omnibus. I mean, how can you explain that you are going to relaunch EU competitiveness by weakening the due diligence directive, a directive that has been adopted only a few months ago at the end of the day, that has never been implemented, so you don't have the proof of saying whether this is creating bureaucracy or not. And what you are going to tackle of this directive, you are going to tackle civil liability, which is the possibility of a victim to claim justice. So how are you going to relaunch competitiveness without allowing a victim to claim justice is not clear. These are the typical examples. Once again, on social conditionality. Social conditionality has no bureaucracy behind. It is zero paperwork for farmers. Zero. Because it is based on the existing controls on working conditions, which are, by the way, unfortunately extremely low. So the whole narrative behind simplification is, at the end of the day, just a way to cut social provision, environmental provision, workers' rights, to cut the social model that has made this part of the world still the most attractive one and the best to live. So this is where we are, why we are extremely worried. I think if you look at the farmers' protest that occurred in last spring, well, at the end of the day, that was a call for a better distribution of wealth across the food chain. It was a call for a better income. It was a call not necessarily to cut environmental ambition and social ambition. It was a call against the trade agreements. It was a call to have a better income. We still, the Commission took the decision to have the Mercosur, Still, the Commission is not doing anything to have a better redistribution of wealth across the food chain, nothing concrete to tackle the huge power of retailers that have when it comes to negotiating. So I think we really have the impression that all our protests or our demonstrations are really not taken into account, and the Commission is taking a different approach. And that's why we really need the S&D Group to listen to civil society, to listen to the trade union movement, to listen to the farmers, to the agricultural community, and to take the clear direction that this community is launching, because we are sending a clear message. But the direction that is taken, for one reason or for the other, now there is the whole discussion about the new geopolitical context, the fact that we need this agreement because of the new geopolitical context. Well, but then this is completely nonsense, because if we are going then to destroy our agriculture sector, we will also feel much less secure at the end of the day. So that's an element that we have to take into consideration. I will conclude by saying the Mercosur deal. The Mercosur deal, I'm not looking at the business dimension. I'm looking at the social one, which is never taken into consideration. Well, the Mercosur countries are among the countries with the lowest rate of respect of the ILO fundamental conventions, among the lowest rate index in respecting this convention. And this agreement could have been eventually an opportunity to make the respect of this convention, to increase the standards, to make sure that it could have been an opportunity to raise also labor and environmental standards in that part of the world. But this was not the case, because the whole sustainable and development chapter is non-binding, and there are basically no sanctions and no enforcement at all. So this is, again, once again, a wrong message, and I think we are really hitting ourselves without understanding the direction that the world is taking.
Celia, also, I know you want to take the word, but also if you can tell me what are your concerns on simplification and environmental simplification that is coming up very soon.
Yes, I'll just comment on the simplification in the CAP first, because it's true that social conditionality has been under attack, but also, of course, environmental conditionality, and now twice. And we're, I guess, quite relieved to see the outcome of the trilogues on the latest simplification package for the CAP. But still, where we are today is so far away from where we started 3 years ago for this supposedly greenest ever CAP. And we have to remember here that these rules, the conditionality rules are being dismantled, are very basic agronomic practices that we're asking farmers to respect, that the majority of farmers are already applying, like crop rotation, for example. The majority of farmers are doing it, and we're dismantling these rules because of a small minority are complaining about them because it doesn't fit their very intensive business model, which is harming the environment. But at the end of the day, this is public money which is going to the sector and which really should come with strings attached. Otherwise, we're talking of just pouring 20% of the EU budget into income support measures with no conditions at all, and that has no legitimacy. It is really shooting ourselves in the foot, if I'm honest, because in a context where everyone is asked to tighten their belt, if we're doing the opposite in the agriculture sector, then that's not going to go down with taxpayers. And so again, here with the new CAP, there's an opportunity to rethink the farm stewardship and to try and set it back on track so that we have a robust framework at EU level that ensures a common playing field across Europe. When it comes to the forthcoming environment omnibus, of course, we're very worried because there has been no impact assessment. All of these simplification efforts are being rushed through very undemocratic and transparent processes. The information we're getting seems to point to the fact that there won't be huge changes to environmental legislation, but it's so arbitrary that it could still change until the last minute. And that would be extremely worrying because we know for a fact that we are actually currently, that there have been a very robust study looking at this. The cost of poor implementation of environmental legislation is 180 billion euros a year in public health costs, in water bills, etc. And that compares with the supposed cost of simplifying the cap, or the benefit, sorry, of simplifying the cap that's promoted by the Commission as 1.5 billion, with no explanation of how they calculated this number in the first place. This just doesn't match up. And we know that environmental legislation is here for a very good reason. We are a highly densely populated continent. We have to look after our environment, otherwise we won't have healthy soils to farm on in the future. And we won't have drinking tap water, as is already the case in many places. So, yes, very concerned, but we keep fighting.
And also regarding organic and changes to the organic regulation that might come up in the coming months, we've seen that these targeted reopenings don't always work, as when they reopened the CMO or the Fair Trading Practices Directive, they became broader political battlegrounds, let's say. So are you concerned about targeted changes to the organic regulation?
Yes, we are concerned. And when at first our reaction as IFOM was also that we were not happy with opening the Basic Act. Because there was already, it is a two-step procedure. First we had the call for simplification, and we very much looked into the implementing regulations and into the official interpretation of the regulation. And there we saw quite a lot of things that could help make life for farmers, organic farmers, easier without overhauling the whole system. And we've made quite some suggestions for that. But then, because of some problems that could not be solved in another way, the Commission announced to reopen the Basic Act, being very targeted and very surgical. We understand the reason why it has to be reopened. And I think we have made some proposals ourselves also. So if it's going to be reopened, there are some issues that we also may like to see solved. But yes, seeing it, well, it is, of course, the co-legislators have the right to say something there. We can only hope that everybody is going for the benefit of organic farming. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm afraid time is running out, but I want to touch upon social conditionality once again before concluding the panel. And I would like to go to Andoni, because one of the proposals that Enrico mentioned before, like linking payments to work aspects to being a good employer, seemed very interesting to me. So I would like to know, what do you think as a farmer of that proposal, and as a whole, how could we improve this the social aspect of agriculture and labor as well in the coming CAP proposal?
Como agricultor y organización de...
As a farmers' organisation, we defend social conditionality. We think that in order to produce food, you have to respect this, and you have to care directly for the workers' conditions, ones who are sharing their work with us. For us, this is essential. We're going to be talking about defensible production within the European Union. As far as we're concerned, when we talk about social conditionality, we also must discuss conditionality for all farmers. Now, at the moment, there's a problem here, a big problem with conditionality. That's the situation of the new arrival. Well, the salaries, when we're looking at the average wage in the EU, is less than 50%. Now, this isn't a situation that can be maintained in this way. So one of the main elements in order to discuss social conditionality is prices. Prices to farmers have to cover production costs. And for this reason, the regulation of the Common Market Organization has to be stronger. because this is a regulation without strength and without having the tools that we defend. The regulation must accompany contracts whereby prices cover production costs. So from that point, we can guarantee a certain degree of income and guarantee the salaries or the payments that farmers have to make, such as salaries, machinery, maintenance, etc. These are all points that have to be considered, and it is a problem when we're looking at our pricing situation. We're seeing that where industry and distribution are imposing prices to a certain extent. On the other hand, the free trade agreements with Mercosur and others are constantly contributing to lowering prices. So either we really deal with this, or when we talk about a new agricultural policy, we have to defend a strong agricultural policy with a good budget and important market regulations. If we don't deal with this contradiction, which is defending a CAP that will fulfill the needs of the farmers and the needs that the European society has, if we don't deal with this contradiction with or this conflict rather with the free trade agreements, I don't know where we will go, how far we can interact with the CAP. Because we have to deal with a change of the way of behaving. It's very difficult for social conditionality.
We need to wrap the panel right now because we started a bit late. But I want to thank all of you, Marian, Andoni, Celia, and Enrico, for your interventions. I think it was very interesting, and it's always great to have diverse views and angles on conditionality. So thank you for being here. An applause for all. And now the closing remarks of this event will be delivered by Christophe Clergeau, the S&D Vice President. Thank you, Christophe. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for you to manage these panels and for all the speakers, all the participants, and all the teams who organize this event, and for the interpreters. I won't come back in the details on what Irache or Dario stated at the beginning, because we have our position paper you all can refer to in details. But just recall that, yes, we want a strong CAP with a strong budget. Yes, we want an holistic, integrated approach of economic, social, and environmental elements. And as we are socialists, we are those who really take care with social issues, and really thank for the IFAT statement. And we want capping and degressivity. It's a key issue for us to have a just cap. So I would like just to underline 4 political messages. First one is European agriculture is at risk. It is at risk because of climate change, collapse of biodiversity, and loss in the quality of soils. But it is also at risk because of unfair competition inside Europe and at international level. And it is at risk because there is a lack of interest. There is a lack of commitment. They are sacrificing agriculture. There is no more such a strong place for agriculture and food issues in the European debate, and it is a crucial major risk for the farmers and for agriculture. My second message is a question. Who killed the strategic dialogue report and proposals? Because you all refer to, there was a very nice moment of collective discussion of consensus, and we totally endorsed the results of the strategic dialogue, because we wanted a new vision for agriculture, not opposing the different stakeholders, but combining their vision and bringing to a new path, a new common path for agriculture. Yes, there was an holistic approach of food value chain with the income for agriculture at the core of the debate. Yes, there was the need for more resources to accompany farmers in green transition and not let them alone to face all they have to face. And there was a new approach of trade relations. A lot of people have forgotten what there was in this report and in the strategic dialogue. It is our still our vision, still our political line. My third element is still a question, and there will be a fourth one. What is it possible to do to achieve with this MFF and this CAP framework? And you answered to this question. It will be very difficult to achieve anything in this global framework. We can improve it. We can have radical amendments. But if we do not change the global size of the MFF, the size of the pocket money for agriculture, and the design of the initial proposal of the Commission for the CAP policy, it will be really difficult to achieve something good. As Irache said, it's not possible to do more with less money. As we all know, to move from regulation, conditionality to incentive would cost more money because it is an investment in change and transition. And the DG Agri totally know that because they worked on that. And what we all know is that we are going towards more competition, unfair competition inside European Union, but also competition in each of our countries, in each of our societies, when farmers and other actors will fight for the limited money. Do we really want a confrontation between agriculture and the rest of the society? It is a major risk for the farmers and for agriculture. And my final question is, but who supports the reform? And who has the power to change it? I didn't hear anybody supporting this reform. Anybody. Perhaps for different reasons. Perhaps for opposite reasons. It's easy to oppose. It's not so easy to propose. I know that. But when a proposal is opposed, is fight by every actor, it should be withdrawn and it should be radically changed. It's the only way to act. And who can you rely on to do that? Can you rely on EPP? Can you rely on ECR? They were supposed to be the Farmers' Party. They were keen of your mobilization in 2024. They were your allies to simplify the regulations in wrong direction in a lot of cases. But where are they? They are leading the Council, they are leading the Commission, they are leading the Parliament, and we are here with this proposal and with this framework. So we are now not the only political force, but the only large political force really supporting the farmers, but also this holistic approach of food value chains, and to support a new path for agriculture in coherence with economic issues, social demands, and the need to adapt to climate change and to move towards a more agroecological model. We are the last large political force to set and to manage this battle. So we need to mobilize because time is running. As you saw, the little thing the Commission gave to some was sufficient for those to move from one position to the other. If you really want to have a better CAP, if you really want to have a better budget, we need mobilization and we need pressure on the Commission and the Council, but also on the MEPs. The best message I receive as MEP is when 10,000 people send me an email to share a key message. Because when the Commission opens a public consultation, it is about 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people. When we receive 10,000 mails from citizens. It is a clear message from civil society. So we need the support from farmers, we need the support from civil society, we need the support from local and regional authorities to make this change, and we need a rush to really have quickly some very important results. So thank you for having been there. Thank you for all the contribution, and just let's mobilize. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christophe Clergeau, S&D Vice President. Thank you very much to all the speakers for joining us, as well the audience in this discussion this morning. And thank you very much for the S&D Group for organizing this timely event. Have a nice day.